The first thing Amina Hassan heard through the locked door wasn't crying. It was the rhythmic thump of a small head against plaster, steady as a heartbeat, hollow as grief. She stood frozen in the corridor of the Holloway estate, her cleaning cart abandoned mid-hall. The agency supervisor had been explicit. The East Wing is private, family quarters, off limits. But that sound, she knew that sound. Her son Ahmed used to rock like that when the world became too loud, too bright, too much. Through a gap in the blackout curtains, Amina glimpsed him. 7 years old, surrounded by untouched meal trays, clutching a woman's scarf like a lifeline. This was the pastor's specialized homeschooling. This was the child no one mentioned at Cornerstone Megachurch, where 8,000 congregants came every Sunday to hear Reverend Marius Holloway preach about God's design for the perfect family. The boy, Caleb, she would learn, didn't look up when she entered through the garden door. He simply continued his rocking, lost in whatever internal rhythm kept him tethered to a world that had become incomprehensible 18 months ago, when the car accident took his mother and left him trapped in grief no one knew how to witness. Amina didn't try to stop him, didn't speak, didn't reach out. Instead, she did something the parade of expensive therapists had never considered. She sat down 3 feet away and began to rock with him. Stay with us as we follow the story of how a Muslim refugee with nothing but presence taught a megachurch pastor what it means to truly see his son, and how one small boy's healing exposed the fractures in a faith built on perfection rather than truth. Sunday morning light filtered through the stained glass of Cornerstone Megachurch, painting rainbow patterns across 8,000 upturned faces. From the pulpit, Reverend Marius Holloway surveyed his congregation with the easy confidence of a man who had built an empire on certainty. God's design for the perfect family, he began, his voice filling every corner of the sanctuary, is not an accident. It is a blueprint for blessing. In the front row, 17-year-old Emma Holloway sat with her spine straight and her hands folded, a living illustration of her father's sermon. She had learned to arrange her face into an expression of attentive devotion, a mask so practiced she could maintain it while her mind cataloged everything she needed to accomplish before Yale's early decision deadline. Marius moved across the stage with practiced grace, his 6'2" frame commanding attention. When we align our households with biblical order, God opens the floodgates of prosperity. Look around you. We are a testament to that truth. The congregation murmured agreement. They didn't know that Marius's shoulders carried permanent tension, that his compulsive morning runs were less about fitness and more about outrunning thoughts he couldn't afford to think. They didn't know that when he referenced his 2 children, he was performing a careful linguistic dance. "Where's Caleb today?" Mrs. Henderson asked Emma after the service, her smile bright with curiosity. Emma's response came automatically, smooth as glass. "He's doing specialized homeschooling, very intensive program." She touched the woman's arm with practiced warmth. "Dad's so committed to giving each of us exactly what we need." The words tasted like ash, but Emma had learned that truth was a luxury she couldn't afford. The Holloway estate sat on 3 manicured acres, all white columns and carefully tended gardens, a monument to everything prosperity gospel promised. Emma let herself in through the side door, bypassing her father who stood in the foyer reviewing next week's sermon notes. She prepared the tray in the kitchen, chicken breast cut into precise squares, carrots steamed until soft, water in the blue cup because the blue cup was always Tuesday through Sunday. Monday was the green cup. Deviation meant disaster. The East Wing smelled of recycled air and something else, something like abandonment. Emma balanced the tray on one hip and unlocked the door with the key she wore on a chain around her neck, hidden beneath her modest blouse. Caleb sat in the corner of his room, rocking, back and forth, his 7-year-old body finding rhythm in a world that had become incomprehensible. His mother's scarf was wound through his fingers, the silk worn soft from 18 months of constant clutching. "Hey, buddy," Emma whispered, setting the tray on the floor 3 feet away, close enough to reach, far enough to not intrude. "I brought dinner." Caleb didn't look up. His humming continued, a tuneless melody that filled the spaces where words used to live. Before the accident, before the screaming metal and shattering glass that took their mother and left Caleb trapped in some internal prison no one knew how to unlock. Emma sat against the wall and pulled out her tablet, pretending to review college essays while actually just keeping vigil. This was love now, presence without expectation, company without demanding connection. Downstairs, Marius stood outside the east wing door, his hand raised to knock. But knocking meant entering, and entering meant confronting the gap between his sermon and his reality. After 5 minutes, he lowered his hand and walked away. That evening, Marius opened his email to find a message from the staffing agency. Your new housekeeper will begin tomorrow, 7 a.m. Amina Hassan. References attached. He barely glanced at the name before approving it. After all, what harm could a housekeeper do? Amina Hassan's battered Honda looked out of place in the circular drive, its dented bumper a rebuke to the estate's polished perfection. She emerged at exactly 7 a.m., adjusting her simple gray hijab against the morning chill, carrying only a small bag with her lunch. The agency supervisor, a brittle woman named Margaret, met her at the service entrance. The Holloways expect discretion and excellence. This is a prominent family. The Reverend's ministry reaches millions. Amina nodded, her dark eyes taking in everything while revealing nothing. She had learned in the refugee camp that survival meant watching carefully and speaking sparingly. Margaret led her through the main house, cataloging expectations in a clipped voice. Dust the library, but don't touch the desk. Clean the master suite on Wednesdays only. Polish the silver before Saturday dinner parties. And then, hand on the door leading to the east wing. This area is private, family quarters, completely off limits. After Margaret departed, Amina began in the kitchen, learning the house's rhythms through her hands. She washed windows, scrubbed floors, moved through the rooms with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to making herself small. But her ears tracked every sound, including one Margaret's lecture hadn't explained, a rhythmic thumping coming from somewhere beyond the forbidden door. Thump, 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 steady as a heartbeat, hollow as grief. Amina knew that sound. Ahmed had made the same rhythm when the market explosion started, when the world became too loud and his small body could only process fear through motion, her hands stilled on the counter. Not your business, she told herself in Somali. You are here to clean, not to care. But the thumping continued, and Amina found her feet carrying her toward the east wing, despite every rational thought. The main door was locked, but the house was old and large, built in a time when estates had service entrances and back stairs. She found her way to the garden, where a glass door stood slightly ajar, as if someone had propped it open and forgotten. The room beyond was dim despite the morning sun. Blackout curtains blocked the windows. Food trays sat untouched, flies beginning to circle. And in the corner, a small boy rocked back and forth, occasionally letting his head meet the wall with that terrible rhythmic thump. Amina stood frozen in the doorway. The boy, 7, perhaps 8, clutched a woman's scarf, his lips moving in silent conversation with someone not present. His eyes were open but focused on something beyond this room, beyond this moment. She should have left. Should have reported to Marius or called the agency, or done any of the appropriate careful things that kept refugees employed and unnoticed. Instead, Amina stepped inside and quietly opened the curtain 6 inches. Not enough to overwhelm, but enough to let in a thread of light. The boy's rocking hitched, his routine disrupted. She waited, breathing slowly, letting him adjust to this small change in his world. Then she moved to the window and opened it 2 inches. Fresh air crept into the stale room. The boy screamed, sharp, piercing, the sound of someone whose words have failed him. Amina didn't flinch. She had heard Ahmed scream like that when the textures were wrong, when the world pressed too close. Instead, she sat down on the floor, 3 feet from the boy, and began to hum. Not an Islamic prayer, that would come later, but something older, a melody her own mother had hummed in the market, something that predated doctrine and spoke only of presence. She pulled her cleaning cloth from her pocket and began folding it. Unfold, fold, unfold, fold. Repetitive motion he could predict, rhythm he could track. After 20 minutes, the boy's rocking slowed. His head no longer sought the wall. His eyes, amber brown and ancient with grief, flickered briefly toward her before returning to their middle distance. Amina rose slowly, retrieved the untouched breakfast tray and replaced it with fresh food from the kitchen, simple things, familiar shapes. She propped the garden door open another inch, creating a pathway to something beyond this dim prison. Then she left, returning to her cleaning as if nothing had changed, though her hands trembled slightly as she polished the already gleaming silver. She asked no questions, made no reports, simply returned to her car at 3 p.m. with her empty lunch bag, her face revealing nothing of the locked room or the boy or the sound that echoed Ahmed's own. But the next morning, she arrived at 6 a.m. instead of 7, and she went directly to the garden door. Tuesday morning arrived with the same pale light, and Amina arrived with it. She parked her Honda in the same spot, walked the same path through the garden, and let herself into Caleb's room at precisely 6 a.m. This time, she carried 7 smooth stones from the garden, each one fitting perfectly in her palm. Caleb was already awake, rocking in his corner, but his head no longer sought the wall. Yesterday's small mercy, the window cracked open, the curtains allowing a thread of light, remained unchanged. He had not, in her absence, tried to restore the darkness. Amina moved to the windowsill and arranged the stones in a line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She touched each one as she placed it, her movements slow enough to track, predictable enough to trust. Then she sat in her spot, 3 feet from Caleb, and began to rock. The melody came from someplace deeper than memory. Her mother had hummed it in the Mogadishu markets, and Amina had hummed it to Ahmed when the world became too sharp, too loud. Now she hummed it for this American boy who spoke the same wordless language of grief her son once knew. Caleb's rocking synchronized with hers. Not immediately, it took perhaps 10 minutes, but gradually their rhythms found each other. When Amina's breath slowed, so did his. When she paused, he waited. On Wednesday, Caleb crawled 3 inches closer to the stones. He didn't touch them, but Amina saw his eyes track their arrangement, counting perhaps, or simply finding comfort in their orderliness. She added nothing new. The same 7 stones, the same melody, the same respectful distance. Ahmed had taught her this. Change was violence to a nervous system already overwhelmed. Safety came from repetition. Thursday morning, Caleb reached out and touched the 3rd stone from the left. Amina kept rocking, kept humming, gave no reaction that would make him self-conscious. But inside, something ancient and maternal stirred. The recognition that trust, once shattered, could be rebuilt, one small gesture at a time. When she left each day, she reset the stones in their precise line, propped the garden door open exactly 2 inches, and departed without looking back. She cleaned the main house with the same quiet efficiency, speaking when spoken to, invisible in the way women like her had learned to be. Marius noticed the meal trays returning with food missing. "Emma, thank you for working with your brother on eating," he said Thursday evening, his voice carrying relief he hadn't earned. Emma, loading the dishwasher, felt the lye coat her tongue like oil. "Sure, Dad." She wanted to tell him, wanted to drag him to Caleb's room and show him what presence looked like, what patience accomplished. But Emma had learned to calculate costs. If Marius knew about Amina's unauthorized access, he might fire her out of liability fears or wounded pride. Better to stay quiet, better to let the healing continue in the shadows. That night, Emma stood at her bedroom window and watched Amina's Honda pull away at 3 p.m. The woman moved through the world with such deliberate stillness, as if she'd learned that survival meant taking up no more space than absolutely necessary. Emma thought about Yale, about escape, about the person she was building herself into. Someone polished and competent and profoundly disconnected from anything real. She thought about her mother, who would have noticed Amina immediately, would have invited her for tea, would have asked questions not out of suspicion, but genuine interest. What would Mom do? Emma wondered, though she already knew the answer. Catherine would have trusted the healing wherever it appeared, in whatever unexpected form. Emma pulled out her phone and, hands shaking slightly, opened the camera. Tomorrow, she would document what was happening in the East Wing. Not to expose it, but to preserve it. Evidence that something true was taking root in a household built on performance. Friday's dawn came cold and sharp. Emma, dressed in the dark, jeans, hoodie, running shoes that wouldn't betray her on the hardwood floors. She told herself she was protecting Caleb, gathering evidence in case Amina proved dangerous or exploitative. But the truth, whispered in the part of her heart not yet calcified by grief and responsibility, was simpler. She needed to see someone succeed where she had failed. Emma positioned herself in the garden at 5:50 a.m., her phone ready, breath misting in the October air. When Amina's Honda arrived exactly on time, Emma felt an absurd gratitude for the woman's consistency. She watched Amina enter through the garden door, watched the ritual unfold through the gap she'd carefully maintained. 7 stones, arranged just so, the cross-legged sitting position, the rocking that started in Amina's shoulders and moved down through her body like a prayer made physical. And Caleb, her brother, her responsibility, her failure. Caleb, who hadn't looked at Emma with recognition in 18 months, who flinched from her touch and screamed at her voice. Caleb was rocking in perfect synchronization with this stranger, both of them humming the same melody. Emma's hands shook as she recorded 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes of her brother's face slack with something that looked almost like peace. When Amina finally stood to leave, Emma retreated to the kitchen, heart hammering. She made coffee with trembling hands, trying to compose herself before the confrontation she knew was necessary. Amina emerged from the east wing at 7:15, moving to begin her cleaning routine as if nothing remarkable had occurred. "What are you doing with him?" Emma's voice came out sharper than intended. Amina turned slowly, her dark eyes meeting Emma's without flinching. "I clean his room." "That's not..." Emma pulled out her phone, played the video. "What techniques are you using? What training do you have?" Amina watched the screen, her expression unchanged. When the video ended, she spoke quietly. "I sit with him. That is all. There has to be more." Emma heard the desperation in her own voice. "Therapists, methods, some kind of approach. He's responding to you." "Your brother knows what it is to lose everything," Amina said. "I also know this. We speak the same language." The simplicity of it felt like a rebuke. Emma had tried everything. Different foods, new tablets, adjusted schedules, research therapies they couldn't pursue without admitting Caleb's condition publicly. She had tried everything except the one thing Amina offered, uncomplicated presence. "Are you a therapist? A teacher?" "I was a teacher, in Mogadishu." Amina's voice carried no pride, just fact. "Now I clean houses." "Then how?" "My son needed the same patience your brother needs. I learned from him before he died." The words landed like stones in still water. Emma saw it then, the grief Amina carried, not hidden, but integrated, worn smooth by time but never erased. This woman understood Caleb not because of training, but because she'd loved someone who required the same language of presence. "Does my father know you're doing this?" "No." Amina returned to her cleaning supplies. "And I think you will not tell him." She was right. Emma watched Amina move through the house with practiced efficiency, and she thought about the church board meeting scheduled for tomorrow, about the deacons who would be visiting, about the image they all worked so hard to maintain. An idea formed, terrible and necessary. Saturday morning, Emma made her choice. While Marius reviewed notes for the board meeting, she went to Caleb's room. He was calmer now, his rocking less frantic, though Amina wouldn't arrive for another hour. "Hey, buddy," Emma whispered. "Want to see Amina?" Caleb's rocking paused. His eyes flickered toward her, the first voluntary attention he'd given her in months. Emma held out her hand. "Come on, let's find her." When Caleb took her hand, his small fingers wrapping around hers for the first time since the accident, Emma felt something crack open in her chest. She led him through the forbidden door, down the hallway, toward the kitchen where Amina worked and where Marius's board meeting was breaking for coffee. Let them see, Emma thought. Let them all see what healing looks like when you stop demanding it take a presentable form. Caleb found Amina at the kitchen sink and simply stood beside her, his hand still in Emma's, his face tilted up toward the woman who'd taught him that the world could be safe again. Emma heard her father's footsteps in the doorway behind them, heard the sharp intake of breath, felt the moment crystallize into something that couldn't be undone. Good, she thought. Let it break. Let everything break. They'd rebuild from honesty or not at all. The deacons arrived like a storm front, their Sunday suits crisp and their faces harder. Marius watched through his study window as Elder Robert Pemberton's Mercedes pulled into the circular drive, followed by two more luxury vehicles carrying the church's power brokers. He'd known this meeting was coming since Saturday, when Deacon Morrison had witnessed Caleb holding Amina's hand in the kitchen. The image, his hidden son, his Muslim employee, the fiction collapsing in real time, had spread through the board's private text chain before Marius could even formulate an explanation. Now, they sat in his study like a tribunal. 8 men whose donations funded the church's expansion, whose approval he'd spent 12 years cultivating. Pemberton arranged himself in the leather chair across from Marius's desk, his silver hair catching the afternoon light like a halo. "Marius?" Pemberton's voice carried the warmth of a winter lake. "We're concerned." "About my housekeeper." Marius kept his tone neutral, though his shoulders betrayed him with their familiar tension. "About your judgment." Pemberton leaned forward. Morrison recognized her from a refugee resettlement story in the Tribune. Amina Hassan, Somali, Muslim. He pronounced each fact like an indictment. "This woman has unsupervised access to your vulnerable son." Marius felt the theological trap closing. In Cornerstone's theology, Muslims were lost souls requiring conversion, not caregivers to be trusted. "She's a housekeeper, nothing more." "Then why is your autistic child, the child you've hidden from this congregation for 18 months, holding her hand like she's family?" The room went silent. Marius noticed Morrison recording on his phone, building evidence for whatever campaign they'd already planned. "You've put us in an impossible position," Pemberton continued. "Either you were deceiving us about your son's condition, or you've allowed an Islamic woman to influence him spiritually. Neither option inspires confidence." "My son is 7 years old and nonverbal." Marius heard his voice rising and forced it down. What spiritual influence could... She was teaching him to pray, to rock. She was sitting with him while he rocked. In hijab, humming what Morrison's wife identified as Arabic prayers. Pemberton pulled out his phone, swiped to a photograph. Marius's stomach dropped. Amina in Caleb's room, both of them in their synchronized rocking, her lips moving in what could be prayer, or could be the melody Marius himself had heard her hum. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" Pemberton set the phone face down on the desk. "What matters is protecting Cornerstone's witness. Your son's situation is unfortunate, but hiding him while employing a Muslim woman sends a message that contradicts everything we preach about biblical household order." Marius thought about Caleb taking food for the first time in months, about his son's face turning toward light after 18 months of darkness, about Amina asking for nothing, expecting nothing, simply offering the one thing Marius had been too proud to give: patient, uncomplicated presence. "I want you to terminate her employment," Pemberton said, "today, and I want you to make a public statement tomorrow about Caleb's condition and your commitment to biblical approaches to special needs care. We've already identified a Christian therapy program that..." "No." The word surprised Marius as much as it did the room. Pemberton's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Marius stood, his height finally an advantage instead of a cage. "Amina has done more for my son in 1 week than I've managed in 18 months. If that threatens your theology, perhaps your theology needs threatening." The silence that followed felt like the moment before a building collapses. Pemberton stood slowly. "Then we have no choice but to call for a congregational vote on your leadership. You have until Wednesday to reconsider." They filed out like judges from a sentencing, leaving Marius alone with the photograph of his son's healing, which looked, from the right angle, like a scandal. Marius didn't sleep that night. He stood at his bedroom window watching the east wing, where a thread of light suggested Amina had already arrived for her unauthorized morning ritual. The church's ultimatum sat on his desk like a stone: choose your ministry or choose your son's healing, as if love could be divided into competing loyalties. At 5:45 a.m., Marius made a decision. He pulled on running clothes and slipped through the house, following the path Emma had taken days before. The garden door stood slightly open, Amina's quiet invitation to a world operating outside his control. He positioned himself where he could observe without intruding, and what he witnessed broke something fundamental in his carefully constructed theology. Amina sat cross-legged on the floor, 7 smooth stones arranged on the windowsill. Caleb mirrored her position 3 feet away, his body rocking in synchronization with hers. She hummed, not Arabic, Marius realized, but something older, something that predated religious division and spoke only of shared sorrow and patient company. His son's face, visible in profile, carried an expression Marius hadn't seen since Catherine's death. Peace. Amina never touched him, never demanded eye contact or speech or any of the milestones Marius's expensive therapists had insisted were necessary for progress. She simply existed beside Caleb's grief, demonstrating through her own gentle rocking that survival was possible, that the world could become bearable again. Marius watched as Caleb reached out and touched one of the stones. Amina's humming never wavered. She didn't praise or encourage, didn't treat the gesture as breakthrough requiring celebration. She just allowed it to be what it was, a small boy testing whether the world might be safe again. After 20 minutes, Amina rose and retrieved a breakfast tray. She placed it within Caleb's reach, then began tidying the room with movements so predictable they became meditation. Caleb watched her, tracking her pattern, his nervous system gradually regulating through her demonstration of calm. When Amina finally turned toward the door, she found Marius standing in the frame. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the megachurch pastor who'd built an empire on certainty, and the refugee housekeeper who possessed nothing but presence. Marius searched for words adequate to the question he needed to ask. How did you know? How did you teach him that being broken doesn't mean being abandoned? Why do you come early? His voice came out rougher than intended. The agency doesn't pay for those hours. Your son expects me. Amina's English carried the precision of someone who'd learned it as survival skill. To break the pattern would hurt him. What methods are you using? What training? I have no training. She met his eyes without flinching. Only experience with my own son, who needed the same patience before he died. The words landed like stones in still water. Marius saw then what he'd been too busy performing to notice. This woman understood Caleb not because of technique, but because she'd loved someone who spoke the same wordless language of overwhelming need. The church board wants me to fire you. Marius heard himself confessing, as if Amina's stillness created space for truth. They think they're concerned about your faith influencing him. And what do you think, Reverend Holloway? The question hung between them like a challenge. Marius looked past her to where Caleb sat examining the stones, his small fingers tracing their smooth surfaces with the focus of someone learning the world could be touched again without causing pain. What did he think? He thought his theology had no room for this, for healing that arrived in hijab, for grace that spoke Somali, for the possibility that God's mercy might not require conversion before it offered comfort. I think, Marius said slowly, that I need to watch, to understand what you're doing. I sit with him, that is all. There has to be more. Amina shook her head. Your son knows what it is to lose everything. I also know this. We speak the same language. She moved past him then, returning to her cleaning as if nothing remarkable had occurred, as if she hadn't just named the thing Marius had been too proud to admit, that his son didn't need a solution or a technique or a therapy. He needed someone willing to sit beside his grief without demanding it, take a more palatable form. That evening, Marius tried to join the morning ritual. His presence agitated Caleb immediately. Too much change, too much unpredictability in a system just beginning to stabilize. Amina suggested, with infinite gentleness, that Marius watch from the doorway instead. And so the megachurch pastor stood at the threshold of his son's room, witnessing what he couldn't yet practice. The discipline of presence without control, of love without the need to fix, of faith that healing sometimes arrived in forms that threatened everything you thought you believed. Tuesday morning's ritual unfolded with the precision of ceremony. Amina arrived at 6, arranged 7 stones on the windowsill, sat cross-legged 3 feet from Caleb, and began to rock. The melody she hummed, ancient, wordless, belonging to no single faith, filled the space between grief and comfort. But today, after 20 minutes, Amina rose and moved to the kitchen counter visible from Caleb's doorway. She placed ingredients there, bread, butter, jam. Her movements were deliberate, predictable. Slice, spread, fold, each action distinct enough to track, repetitive enough to trust. Caleb appeared in the doorway, clutching his mother's scarf, his eyes following Amina's hands. She didn't acknowledge his presence directly, didn't turn, didn't speak, didn't demand interaction. She simply continued her pattern, creating space for him to observe without pressure to participate. After 10 minutes, Caleb took 3 steps closer. Wednesday, Amina carried one of the 7 stones outside and placed it beneath the garden's oak tree. Then she returned to Caleb's room and waited. His rocking intensified, disrupted pattern, unexpected change. But Amina began humming, and gradually his rhythm steadied. She walked to the garden, leaving the door open behind her, stood beside the oak, waited. Marius, watching from his study window, held his breath. He'd been documenting everything in a leather journal, filling pages with observations that read like field notes on a species he'd forgotten how to understand. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Caleb appeared in the doorway, backlit by morning sun. His first time outside since the accident. He took one tentative step onto the grass, then another, moving toward the stone with the focus of someone on pilgrimage. When he reached it, he picked it up and carried it back inside, restoring order to his universe. Thursday, Amina brought a textured blanket, soft cotton with a pattern of raised diamonds, similar in feel to his mother's silk scarf, though different enough to not be replacement. She draped it over the chair in Caleb's room and said nothing. Caleb approached it slowly, fingers reaching out to trace the diamonds. That night, Emma found him sleeping beneath both the scarf and the blanket, his small body finally warm enough to rest deeply. Friday morning, Amina hummed something new. Not the Somali lullaby, but a melody Marius recognized. Great is thy faithfulness, the hymn he'd been rehearsing for Sunday. She'd been listening, learning, building a bridge between her world and theirs. Caleb's humming synchronized with hers, their voices creating harmony where there had been only silence. Marius observed everything, his notebook filling with desperate attempts to codify what Amina knew instinctively. Safety before connection, pattern before change, presence before demand. Emma joined the morning sessions, sitting beside Amina in wordless solidarity. Marius saw his children together again, not interacting yet, but occupying the same space, breathing the same air, finding a shared rhythm. Something in his chest that had been clenched for 18 months began, tentatively, to loosen. But Friday afternoon shattered the fragile peace. Elder Pemberton's Mercedes pulled into the drive unannounced. Marius met him in the foyer, already reading disaster in the man's tight-lipped smile. "I was in the neighborhood," Pemberton said, though his neighborhood was 15 miles away. "Thought I'd check in." He'd timed his arrival for when Amina would be working. Through the study window, they could see the garden where Amina sat with Caleb and Emma, all 3 arranging stones in an intricate pattern. Pemberton raised his phone and photographed them. The click of the camera shutter sounded like a trap springing shut. "Marius," he said quietly, "we need to talk about your household management." That evening, Marius's email inbox contained Pemberton's message to the entire board. Concerning developments require immediate attention. The pastor's son is being influenced by Islamic practices. Attached photographic evidence. Emergency session recommended. Marius stared at the photograph. In it, his daughter smiled. His son's face showed peace. Amina's posture radiated patient strength. The image looked like healing. Pemberton had captioned it, indoctrination. Saturday morning arrived with the weight of verdict. The church board convened not in their usual conference room, but at Pemberton's estate, a subtle assertion of power, holding court on his territory where Marius became supplicant rather than leader. 8 board members sat in Pemberton's study, surrounded by certificates of business achievement and photos of his perfect family. What the photographs didn't show: the gay son expelled 15 years ago, erased from family narrative as cleanly as Caleb had been hidden in the East Wing. "Gentlemen," Pemberton began, his silver hair catching light like a halo, "we face a crisis of leadership." He distributed printed packets. The photograph, testimony from the previous deacons who'd witnessed Caleb taking Amina's hand, research into Amina's background highlighting her refugee status and Muslim faith. The dossier read like prosecution evidence. "Marius has hidden his son's condition for 18 months, Pemberton continued, then granted unsupervised access to an Islamic woman. This appears as either deception or incompetence. Marius felt his crisis management training engage, the measured breathing, the neutral expression, the voice pitched to convey authority. Amina is a housekeeper who's been kind to my son, nothing more. She's teaching him to pray. Pemberton pulled out his phone, played a video Marius hadn't known existed. In it, Amina and Caleb rocked together, both humming. To anyone looking for threat, it could appear as Islamic prayer. "They're sitting together," Marius said, hearing defensiveness creep into his voice. "She hums while she works. In hijab, in your son's bedroom, teaching him rituals." Board member Tom Chen shifted uncomfortably. "Marius, help us understand. Why haven't we known about Caleb's needs?" The question, asked without malice, landed harder than Pemberton's accusations. Marius felt 18 months of shame crystallize into this moment. The gap between his preaching and his living finally made visible. "I was protecting him," Marius said, the words hollow even to his own ears. "Or protecting yourself?" Pemberton leaned forward. "Your ministry is built on family success. An autistic child contradicts that brand." Janet Reeves, whose son's addiction Marius knew about, spoke for the first time. "Or maybe Marius was drowning and did the best he could. We've all hidden struggles to maintain appearances here." "This isn't about appearance," Pemberton snapped. "It's about doctrinal integrity. We cannot have Islamic practices integrated into a pastor's household." The board divided into factions, Pemberton's camp demanding immediate action, a smaller group willing to ask questions. But even the sympathetic ones looked uncomfortable with the photograph of Amina's hijab beside Caleb's peaceful face. After 2 hours, Pemberton delivered the ultimatum. Terminate Amina immediately. Engage a Christian family therapist for Caleb. Deliver a sermon Sunday on guarding households against external influence, or we'll call a congregational vote on your leadership. "She's helped my son more than anyone," Marius said quietly. "Your judgment is compromised by desperation. We're giving you until Wednesday." Marius left defeated. Returned home to find Amina teaching Caleb to arrange stones in a cross pattern, honoring his faith, not imposing hers. The tenderness of it broke something in him. Sunday's sermon felt like performance art, Marius speaking words about trust while his own faith hemorrhaged. Monday morning, he told Amina about the ultimatum, but couldn't force out the words, "You're fired." Amina responded with characteristic calm, "I will make this simple. I will leave. Your son is stronger now. He can continue with you." But Tuesday at 6 a.m., when Amina didn't arrive, Caleb's distress escalated with terrifying speed. By noon, he'd resumed headbanging. By evening, he'd refused all food and curled in the corner, clutching both scarves, his mother's and Amina's, as if holding on to everyone he'd lost. Emma sobbed helplessly beside him. Marius stood in the doorway feeling his ministry, his reputation, his carefully constructed theology all weighed against his son's anguish. He called Amina. "Please, come back, just until Wednesday. I'll handle the board." Knowing, even as he said it, that he was choosing temporary peace over permanent solution, postponing the moment when he'd have to decide who he really was. Wednesday morning arrived with Amina's Honda in the driveway at 6 a.m. sharp. Caleb's distress evaporated the moment she entered his room, his small body uncurling from its defensive position as he reached for her hand. Marius stood in the doorway watching them, sleepless and desperate. He'd spent the night drafting a compromise proposal for the board meeting that afternoon, supervised visits, documented therapy progress, a gradual transition plan, words arranged like protective walls around the healing he couldn't bear to lose. But watching Amina sit beside his son, their synchronized rocking creating a rhythm that needed no supervision or documentation, Marius felt the futility of his carefully constructed arguments. This wasn't something that could be managed or negotiated, it simply was. At 2 p.m., Marius presented his proposal to the board in Pemberton's study. The 8 men listened with varying degrees of patience while he outlined accountability measures and Christian therapy integration. When he finished, Pemberton leaned back in his leather chair. "Marius, this isn't negotiable. Your ministry's credibility depends on clear boundaries. A Muslim woman cannot be part of your household structure." "She's not teaching him Islam," Marius said, hearing the pleading edge in his voice and hating it. "She's just sitting with him, rocking with him, humming what my wife identified as Arabic prayers." Pemberton pulled out his phone again, played the video. To the congregation, this looks like exactly what it is: Islamic influence on a vulnerable child. Board member Janet Reeves spoke up. "Or it looks like someone showing compassion to a grieving child while we protected our image instead of his well-being." "Janet," Pemberton's voice carried warning, "we're not here to question Marius's intentions, but his judgment has clearly been compromised." Tom Chen shifted uncomfortably. "What if we allowed Amina to continue with proper oversight, regular check-ins, documented?" "No," Pemberton stood. "This isn't a discussion. Marius, we're giving you one final option. Amina leaves today. You deliver a sermon Sunday on guarding biblical households, and you publicly commit to approve special needs support. Or we call a congregational vote on your leadership Friday morning." Marius looked around the room. 3 board members met his eyes with sympathy but wouldn't contradict Pemberton. 2 avoided looking at him entirely. Only Janet held his gaze with something like solidarity. "If I refuse?" Marius asked quietly. "Then you're telling this congregation that their pastor values a Muslim employee over their spiritual leadership. How do you think that vote will go?" Marius drove home in silence, Pemberton's ultimatum echoing like a death sentence. When he arrived, he found Amina in Caleb's room, teaching him to arrange stones in an elaborate pattern. Not random, Marius realized, but a cross. She'd been honoring his faith all along. The tenderness of it broke him completely. "Amina," his voice came out rough. "The board has made their decision final." She looked up, her dark eyes steady. "I understand. I tried to negotiate. I offered supervision, documentation, everything I could think of. Reverend Holloway." She stood, her movements deliberate. "Your son does not need documentation. He needs someone who sees him as he is, not as what he should become." "I know." The words felt like confession. "But I don't know how to give him that and keep everything else." "Then perhaps," Amina said gently, "you must choose what matters most." She gathered her simple bag, touched Caleb's head once with infinite gentleness, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. "When you are ready to choose him," she said, "I will still be here." Then she was gone, leaving Marius alone with his son and the ruins of every certainty he'd built his life upon. Thursday morning arrived without Amina's Honda in the driveway. By 8 a.m., Caleb had resumed rocking with violent intensity. By noon, he'd stopped eating entirely. By evening, he'd curled into the corner with both scarves, his mother's silk and Amina's textured blanket, and begun the hollow keening that Marius remembered from the weeks after Catherine's death. Emma sat on the floor beside her brother, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, we have to do something. He thinks she abandoned him too." Marius stood paralyzed in the doorway, watching his son's anguish and feeling the weight of every choice that had led to this moment. His ministry built on perfection, his son hidden like a shameful secret, his desperate need for approval that mattered less than nothing compared to Caleb's pain. "Call her," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Please, just call her." But when Marius dialed Amina's number, she didn't answer. He left a message, then another. By midnight, his voicemail box was full of increasingly desperate pleas. Friday morning, Emma made her own choice. She found Amina's address through the employment agency, a small apartment in the refugee housing complex across town. She drove there with Caleb in the back seat, his rocking never ceasing, his keening filling the car like a prayer. Amina answered the door in simple clothes, her hijab arranged loosely. When she saw Caleb, something in her careful composure cracked. "I cannot come where I am not wanted," she said to Emma. "It will only hurt him more when I must leave again." "Then don't leave again." Emma's voice carried a strength she didn't know she possessed. "Help me understand what he needs. Teach me how to sit with him the way you do." Amina studied Emma's face, 17 years old and ancient with responsibilities she'd never asked for. "Your brother does not need techniques. He needs someone who can bear witness to his grief without trying to fix it. I don't know how to do that, because you have been taught that love means solving, but sometimes love means simply remaining." She invited them inside. The apartment was sparse, a mattress on the floor, a small table, photographs of a young boy with Amina's eyes. Caleb went directly to the photographs, touching them with careful fingers. "Your son?" Emma asked. "Ahmed. He was 10 when he died." Amina's voice remained steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "He taught me everything I know about presence, about loving someone whose needs you cannot always meet." They sat together on the floor, Emma watching as Amina began the familiar ritual, the rocking, the humming, the patient silence. Gradually, Caleb's keening subsided. His body found Amina's rhythm. Marius's calls kept coming, 8, 10, 12 messages. Emma texted him the address. When Marius finally arrived, breathless and disheveled, he found his children in Amina's small apartment, found his son calm for the first time in days, found the Muslim refugee he'd tried to manage and contain simply sitting with his family's grief as if it were her own. "I quit," Marius heard himself say. The words surprised him as much as they surprised everyone else. "The ministry. I'll resign before the vote. I choose him. I choose this." Amina met his eyes. "Do you choose him because you fear losing your position? Or because you finally see him?" The question hung in the small room like a challenge, like an invitation, like the first honest moment Marius had faced in 18 months. Saturday afternoon, Marius stood before 24 cameras in the church parking lot, his family beside him like witnesses to his confession. Emma's hand rested protectively on Caleb's shoulder. His son clutched both scarves, Catherine's silk and Amina's textured cotton, like talismans against the world's scrutiny. Marius had written nothing. The carefully constructed speeches that had built his ministry felt obscene in this moment. He'd spent 12 years crafting the perfect words. Now only raw truth would suffice. "I've been a coward," he began, his voice catching. "For 18 months, I hid my son because his autism contradicted the theology I preached. I told you God rewards faithful families with perfection. Then my perfect family shattered, and I couldn't reconcile my sermons with my reality." The cameras captured everything: his trembling hands, Emma's tears, Caleb's gentle rocking. Marius felt simultaneously exposed and liberated, shedding the armor of performance like dead skin. God sent help in a form I never expected. A Muslim refugee named Amina Hassan, who asked nothing and offered everything my son needed. She taught me that healing doesn't require sharing someone's faith, it requires sharing their pain. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. If my theology can't accommodate the possibility that divine mercy arrives in hijab, speaking Somali, offering presence without doctrine, then my theology was never about God at all. It was about control, about maintaining an image that served my pride, not my son. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite wet cheeks. "Amina taught me what my mother would have wanted me to know, that love means witnessing someone exactly as they are, not demanding they become who we need them to be." The footage spread like wildfire. Hashtags trended, opinion pieces proliferated. The megachurch pastor's crisis of faith became national conversation about autism acceptance, religious hypocrisy, and interfaith compassion. Saturday evening's emergency board meeting crackled with tension. Pemberton moved for immediate termination. Janet Reeves countered with documentation she'd gathered quietly. Dozens of congregants, emboldened by Marius's confession, had contacted her to share their own hidden struggles. Special needs children they've hidden, mental illness they've denied, addictions they've concealed, Janet said, her voice sharp with righteous anger. Marius's vulnerability gave them permission to be honest. Isn't that what church should offer? The vote split 5-3 in Marius's favor. Pemberton and 2 allies resigned immediately, their parting words about doctrinal compromise echoing hollow in the face of human need. Late that night, Marius found Amina's number and called. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice carrying the caution of someone who'd learned that hope could be weaponized. "The board voted to keep me," Marius said, "but that's not why I'm calling. I'm asking if you'll come to Sunday service, not as an employee, as a guest, as family." Silence stretched between them, pregnant with 18 months of hidden grief, 1 week of healing, and the weight of choices that would reshape everything. "Your congregation will judge this," Amina said finally. "They will see a Muslim woman in your church and question Sante." "Everything! Then let them question. I'm done living for their approval." Marius surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. "Caleb needs you. Emma needs you. And I'm beginning to understand that I need you too, not because you have all the answers, but because you've taught me to sit with the questions." Another pause. Then, "What time does service begin?" Marius closed his eyes, gratitude washing through him like grace. 10 a.m., but would you come early? Caleb will want his morning ritual. I always come early, Amina said, and Marius could hear the smile in her voice. Your son expects me. Sunday morning arrived with the quality of verdict, the church parking lot filling beyond capacity. Media vans crowded the side streets. Protesters held signs about biblical purity, while counter-protesters offered rainbow flags and messages of inclusion. The scandal had drawn spectators hungry for either redemption or collapse. Marius had slept 3 hours. He'd spent the pre-dawn darkness in Caleb's room, watching Amina perform her ritual, stones arranged just so, the patient rocking, the wordless melody that had become their family's prayer. His son's peace in her presence felt like evidence of something his theology books had never adequately explained. At 9:55, 5 minutes before service, the sanctuary doors opened and Amina entered wearing her most formal hijab, deep blue, carefully draped. The collective intake of breath sounded like wind through trees. Caleb, sitting front row with Emma, saw her immediately. He slipped from his sister's grasp and walked straight to Amina, taking her hand with the confidence of someone who'd learned the world could be trusted again. Marius stepped down from the platform. Would you sit with us, with my family? Amina's eyes held his for a long moment, reading intention, measuring cost. Then she nodded and allowed herself to be led to the front pew, where Emma made space with fierce protectiveness. Marius returned to the pulpit, his notes abandoned. Many of you came expecting scandal. Instead, I hope you'll witness testimony, not mine, but my son's. He invited Caleb forward. His son climbed the steps carefully, Amina's presence a steadying force even from her seat. Using picture cards Emma had prepared, Caleb communicated in his halting way about darkness, loneliness, and the light returning when someone simply sat beside his grief. Caleb placed a single stone on the pulpit, smooth river rock, palm-sized, unremarkable except for what it symbolized. Present, he said, the word clear as morning. Marius felt something fundamental shift in his chest. My son cannot preach sermons, but he's taught me more about the gospel than my seminary degree ever did. He's taught me that healing doesn't require sharing someone's faith. It requires sharing their pain. Walkouts began, perhaps 50 people, their exit strategic and loud. But more remained, leaning forward, hungry for permission to be broken, and beloved simultaneously. Marius outlined structural changes, support groups for families with special needs, removal of perfect family language from church materials, interfaith dialogue on compassion. The response divided cleanly. Those committed to image reacted with horror, but those exhausted by performance wept with relief. Anyone carrying hidden shame, Marius concluded, come forward. Place a stone at the altar, not as confession of sin, but as witness to your humanity. The response overwhelmed him. Dozens came, parents of struggling children, adults battling addiction, families fractured by secrets that thrived in darkness. The pile of stones grew into a cairn of shared brokenness. Amina never moved from the front pew, but her presence anchored everything. When the service finally ended, several congregants approached her with tentative apologies, others with questions about helping their own children. She received each with characteristic patience, deflecting praise while offering practical wisdom earned through loss. Late that afternoon, after the crowds dispersed and quiet returned, Marius found his family in the garden, Emma, Caleb, and Amina arranging stones in patterns only they understood. He joined them without invitation, and no one objected when he sat inside their circle. They'd become something the outline never predicted. Not family reconstituted, but family reimagined from honest pieces. Sunday afternoon light filtered through Cornerstone's sanctuary windows, painting rainbow patterns across empty pews. The congregation had dispersed hours ago, but Marius remained, staring at the stone cairn they'd created, dozens of river rocks representing hidden struggles finally brought into daylight. Amina found him there at 4 p.m., still in his rumpled suit, shoulders curved like question marks. Several families approached me, she said, settling into the pew beside him with her characteristic stillness. They want to know how I helped Caleb. I tried to explain there is no technique, only presence, but they insist I must have methods. Marius turned toward her, really looking for perhaps the first time since she'd arrived at his estate. Her face carried lines earned through surviving things his theology had never adequately addressed. Violence that didn't distinguish between faithful and faithless, loss that came regardless of prayer. The board voted to keep me, he said. 5-3, Pemberton and 2 others resigned, but staying feels like choosing the easy path again, like I'm accepting permission to love my son rather than claiming that right myself. Then, what would claiming look like? The question hung between them, patient as her morning vigils with Caleb. Marius thought about his 18 months of hiding, his careful management of image, his desperate need for approval that had cost his son light and air, and the simple dignity of being seen. I want to offer you something, he said slowly. Not employment. You were never just a housekeeper, but family. A place in our household, if you'll accept it. Not because Caleb needs you, though he does, because we all do. Amina's hands folded in her lap, still as prayer. Reverend Holloway, I'm a Muslim woman in a Christian household, a refugee with nothing. You're offering something beautiful, but the world will never stop judging this. Then let them judge. Marius surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. I've spent 12 years building a ministry on certainty and perfection. It nearly destroyed my son. I'm ready to build something else, something honest. Your congregation will divide further. The ones who stay will be choosing presence over performance. That's the church I want to serve. Amina studied his face, measuring intention, reading the grief he'd finally stopped trying to manage away. I lost my family to violence I could not prevent. For 3 years, I believed my purpose died with them. But watching Caleb emerge from his darkness, I began to think Ahmed taught me something that still has use, that my grief might serve someone else's healing. Then stay, Marius said simply. Not in the servants' quarters or the guest house, as family. Help me learn what you already know, how to sit beside pain without demanding it take a more acceptable shape. The proposal felt simultaneously radical and inevitable. Emma appeared in the sanctuary doorway with Caleb, both of them carrying bags from Amina's apartment. They'd anticipated her answer before she'd given it. I will stay, Amina said finally. But you must understand, I cannot pretend to be Christian. I will pray my prayers, observe my faith. If this causes problems, it will cause problems, Marius interrupted, and we'll face them honestly, as family does. Caleb crossed the sanctuary and placed a stone in Amina's palm, smooth river rock, warm from his small hand. Then he placed one in Marius's hand, completing some circle only he understood. Monday morning, Amina moved into the estate's pool house, renovated into a small apartment with windows facing the garden. That evening, they established new routines, breakfast together, Amina's morning ritual with Caleb, Emma's college preparation, Marius's sermon writing transformed by questions he'd never dared ask. They'd become something the outline never predicted, not family reconstituted, but family reimagined from broken pieces. 2 months later, late January sun struggled through winter clouds as Marius stood in Caleb's room watching the morning ritual that had become their household's foundation. Amina arranged 7 stones on the windowsill with deliberate precision. Caleb mirrored her movements, his small hands steady with practice. Then, a miracle Marius had stopped daring to hope for. Caleb spoke. Mama? The word emerged tentatively, testing weight. His fingers touched Catherine's silk scarf, then Amina's textured blanket. Gone. Amina's hands stilled. Marius held his breath, afraid movement might shatter the moment. Emma, passing the doorway, froze mid-step. Yes, Amina said quietly, your mama is gone, but you remember her, that love remains. Amina stays? I stay. Caleb nodded, satisfied with this truth, and returned to arranging stones. Marius felt something crack open in his chest, not the breaking of grief, but its transformation, sorrow, becoming something bearable through witness. The changes accumulated gradually. Caleb began attending Sunday services, sitting front row with Emma and Amina, a quiet room available when sensory overwhelm required retreat. His verbal communication expanded slowly, simple phrases, questions, observations delivered with startling clarity. Amina's presence transformed the church community in ways Marius hadn't anticipated. Other families with special needs children sought her guidance. She taught her presence approach through the church's new support group, always clarifying she represented lived experience, not professional expertise. The congregation had shrunk, perhaps 1,500 regular attendees now, down from 8,000. But those who remained engaged with fierce commitment. Marius's sermons addressed real struggle instead of idealized perfection. Collection plates held less money, but more honest faith. Challenges persisted. An anonymous complaint to state services questioned Amina's caregiving role, triggering investigation. A social worker visited, interviewed the family, observed Caleb's environment, and documented progress. The investigation closed favorably. Caleb's improvement was undeniable, the household appropriate, Amina's role beneficial, though unconventional. The deeper challenge emerged on a February afternoon when Caleb asked, through picture cards and halting speech, where his mother was buried. For 2 months, everyone had avoided this topic, but Caleb was ready to engage. Marius, Emma, and Amina brought him to Catherine's grave for the first time since the funeral. Caleb studied the headstone with careful attention, tracing letters with small fingers. "Mama loved me?" "Yes," Marius said, his voice rough. "More than anything. I couldn't save her." The words punched through Marius like revelation. His son had been carrying this, the child's magical thinking that somehow his presence in the car had caused or could have prevented the accident. "Caleb," Marius knelt in the grass, meeting his son's amber eyes. "Nothing you did or didn't do caused the accident. Mama's death was not your fault." Amina placed 3 stones on Catherine's grave, one from Marius, one from Emma, one from Caleb. "We honor her by remembering," she said, "and by continuing to love each other well." They stood together in the winter cemetery, 4 people learning that healing didn't mean forgetting, only integrating loss into something bearable through shared witness. 6 months after Amina first opened Caleb's curtains, spring arrived with the quality of benediction. Marius stood in Cornerstone's garden, now transformed into a memorial space, watching families gather for the first Stones of Hope event, an interfaith gathering where parents of special needs children shared their stories without shame. The church had changed fundamentally. Attendance hovered around 1,500, those who'd chosen presence over performance, authenticity over image. The prosperity gospel language had been stripped from mission statements, replaced by commitments to witness suffering honestly rather than demand its invisibility. Marius no longer preached certainty. His sermons now asked questions his theology couldn't answer, creating space for doubt as sacred as faith. The transformation had cost him influence in the broader evangelical movement, but gained him something more valuable: the ability to sleep without nightmares of his son's face pressed against locked doors. In the garden, dozens of families contributed stones to the growing cairn. Each rock represented hidden pain finally brought into light: autism, addiction, mental illness, divorce, bankruptcy, all the human struggles that thrived in darkness when communities demanded perfection. Caleb moved through the crowd with Amina's steadying presence. His verbal communication still limited, but his comfort with human contact remarkably expanded. He placed 3 stones today, one for his mother, one for his darkness, one for his emerging self. Emma spoke to the gathered crowd. Her acceptance to Yale deferred for a year, while she helped establish the church's special needs ministry. "My brother taught me that love doesn't mean fixing someone," she said, her voice steady despite emotion. "It means sitting beside their struggle without demanding they make it more comfortable for us." Marius watched his daughter with fierce pride. She'd sacrificed nothing essential, only the performance of perfection that had been slowly suffocating her authentic self. Her gap year had transformed her writing from technically proficient to devastatingly honest. Her college essay about Amina's quiet revolution through presence had won multiple scholarships. The event concluded with an interfaith blessing. Marius offered a Christian prayer acknowledging that mercy sometimes arrived in unexpected forms. Then he invited Amina forward. She'd resisted speaking publicly, but finally agreed to share one brief reflection. "In Somalia, I lost everything," she began, her accented English carrying the precision of someone who'd learned the language as survival skill. "My husband, my son, my home. For 3 years, I believed my purpose died with them." The garden fell silent except for birdsong and children's distant laughter. "But grief taught me something the Quran promises and your Bible echoes, that broken hearts, when held honestly, can hold more compassion than perfect ones. Ahmed's needs taught me patience I didn't know I possessed. His death taught me that love continues even when the beloved is gone." Amina's eyes found Caleb, who'd moved to stand beside Marius. Your son reminded me that my grief might serve someone else's healing, that Ahmed's short life still has purpose through what he taught me about presence. She concluded with a brief prayer in Somali, then its English translation. May we have courage to remain present through shared grief and patience to witness each other into wholeness. As twilight fell, the four of them, Marius, Emma, Caleb, and Amina, sat in the garden's center. Caleb arranged stones in a new pattern, not a line or cross, but a circle with space for all of them. Family, he said quietly, his clearest word yet. Marius recognized the profound truth. They hadn't rebuilt what was lost. They'd created something entirely new from broken pieces, a family formed not by blood or doctrine, but by the courage to remain present through shared sorrow and the patience to witness each other into belonging. The stones held their circle as darkness fell and the first stars emerged, mapping light through emptiness.